Hey everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And just to quickly go over some of our objectives, our number one goal is to just kind of go over and review our release timeline for the new Aware navigation. And we're going to explore some of those Aware features that won't be all encompassing because it's only a quick 30-minute lunch and learn. And I'm going to try to limit it actually to about 20 minutes. So we have plenty of time to review Q&A and give you some tips for the rollout near the end of my portion as well. We're going to identify some of your quality of life enhancements within the new nav. So it wasn't just bringing it over and making it look fancy. We do have a few things that have been added to make your life a little easier. And like I said, we'll end by trying to talk about how you can take some initiatives and steps to support your local rollout of the new navigation. And we'll keep going from there. Here we go. So what were our objectives in our timeline? When we first started exploring getting into a new Aware kind of look and feel, we had some guiding principles. We wanted a new user experience that simplified access to highly used functions. We definitely made it clear that we needed all functions that existed in Classic Aware to come over into the new Aware space. And you'll see it's Aware beta there, but we're starting to really try to call it Aware, new Aware. So what's going to be there for everyone before too terrible much longer. And I'll talk about that in the timeline here in a second. But we also wanted to do no harm because as any beta experience can be, occasionally there's issues, there's bumps in the road. We try to fix them as we go. So Classic Aware is available until we actually make the full-fledged switch and we retire Classic Aware. So here's our initial, or not our current timeline. We had an initial timeline that has shifted a little bit, but this is our current timeline. We wanted beta to be the default access, even though Classic is going to be still available. We wanted it to be the first thing you saw so that you could begin to engage with it and start to become familiar with it. And we're going to do that as a rolling release or phased rollout throughout the month of April. So that means at some point in the month of April, you and your district will see a change where instead of seeing Classic Aware or the new Aware, whichever one you access last, everyone will access the new Aware as their default. Don't panic. Communicate with some of your people about some of that. Classic is still available with one click up at the top of the navigation. If that's somewhere you just feel like I need to have that experience back to do what I need to do immediately. We're also looking for feedback throughout that month of April. And even now, as you're exploring the new navigation space, if you notice something that's missing or not working in the new Aware, let us know. Shoot an email to support@eduphoria.net. And we're starting to pull and collect that feedback together to make sure the experience is as paired as possible and as seamless as possible. And this last bullet is actually updated. Our plans were to retire Classic Aware in the summer of 2023, somewhere near the end of July. We have heard your feedback already. We have been listening and we have decided that we are going to push that back. We're not going to close the Classic Aware this summer. However, it is going to close eventually. We're going to try to find a nice, not necessarily easy, but good time that avoids large testing events, benchmarking, that kind of thing, to actually retire Classic Aware sometime in the next school year. So Aware will still be available for you to do some of your back to school training and those sorts of things as necessary. So let's talk about using Aware Beta and what's new. I like to start with what's new because some of you may have been to these mini webinars before, and after you see what's new, you might be able to bounce and be done with it. But when you're trying the new Aware, again, some of our guiding principles were streamlining things to access like data views, assessments, forms, and profiles. Development is actually rounding out and is almost done. There are a couple of little things, but that development will continue throughout the rest of the school year. And we're going to have all connections complete. In theory, they're actually complete now. So that's why we're asking for some of that feedback. If you go in and you see something missing, let us know. Here's the latest changes. If you have been in the new Aware Nav space before, you may have noticed Quick Views is now a thing. It wasn't a thing before. Prior to just very recently, Quick Views or configuring a data view was part of just a data view button. You had a landing page, you had to click a button to get to it. We pulled that out. Quick Views, now you just click that, you get access to the table. I'll show you that looks here in just a second. And with that, the data view button is now called the data view bank. And instead of having a landing card or landing page, your favorites are now in the overview and you can access the data view bank with one click. So that's the new that's happened since our last webinar. Now, let's actually review what's going on and what's available. So as I jump into the new Aware space, when you first log in, a lot of you may land here in Classic, and you'll probably see this announcement. Hey, just for you, check out and explore the new Aware space today. This button right here will actually change its label probably today. Instead of saying try Aware Beta, it'll actually say try or back to the new Aware Nav. You'll click that, and depending on your rights, you'll see either setting gears or not, and some, if not most, of all of these things in the left navigation. Where you start is the overview. The overview, we tried to be intuitive and figure, hey, a lot of the times when you come into Aware, you might be looking for recently scored assessments. So this widget right here in the overview shows you the 5 assessments that were scored most recently. So if you see one you want to check out, you can just click it and it'll take you straight to that data. Or you can go back to that overview. You also have a widget for your last visited assessments. So if you're someone that's constantly continuing to iterate on assessments, adding questions, revising them, etc., the 5 most recently visited are right here to help you remove a potential click and get you right to that assessment without having to go to the author table. And then lastly, the data view bank right here, you can favorite up to 5 saved or quick views from the data view bank if there's ones that you access a lot, and you can click straight to that and go to that view. Let me expand our nav here. Next thing I'd like to show you is quick views. Like I said, quick views is relatively new and loads the data view table as if you were going through the quick view tree, just like in Classic. Something that's new and interesting are all these filters. You can filter by year up here at the top, by test type, so that you're looking for, say, specific tests. And then once you've gotten the tests that you want, you can actually check more than one now before you even start. The test that you have checked populate here on the right, and then you can choose a template to apply right off the bat, or just go with the default one and hit apply. You'll notice you can also summarize by subject right here, which is an approximate but not fully complete implementation of triple clicking behavior that used to exist. So you can check that and get kind of your triple click. Hit apply and you load that data view. Click back to quick views and it takes you right back to the table where it was, where you can reset your filters and start all over. And again, with selecting tests, we have capped that at about 20. Hopefully you don't need more than 20, because you get past that and it really starts having performance issues. Here's the data view bank. The data view bank is a space where we've consolidated all of those views that were in my saved views and shared with me, and district views and campus views. And we've put them all in one table so that you can actually filter them by whether or not they're a quick view or a saved view and who has access to it. I want to look at quick views for all of my teachers, and these are the ones that are there. If it's something that you can live click, the link shows a live click, or you can edit it with the pencil button, or you can favorite it. I'll go ahead and show that favoriting behavior. Oh, it says I'm capped out. But you click that view from here and it'll load straight from the data view bank and give you that saved data view template that you had prior. There it is. On the left, if you have premium access, you'll see single test. I won't highlight that now. If you have the license for Axiom, you'll see that on the left as well. Reports works just as it always has. You click reports, you see your lead forward reports, accountability reports, and summary data reports, depending on your rights. All of those work just as they always have. And this should look very familiar from this space once you click that far. Next up, we've got author. Within the author table, you can see all of the assessments that you've got going in pending and active status on the left. You get a variety of information. Up along the top, you can see the standard rubric or inventory assessments. Inventories was recently hooked up within the last couple of months. You can create a new assessment and all of these other options like usual, which were in the left navigation before from the author assessment table, and it should be pretty seamless. If you're an administrator, you can see the proctor button, which if you have the right to proctor, where you can search for your individual staff members and then kind of impersonate them to start and stop and manage assessments. If you're a teacher, instead of proctor, that button says administer. I hopped over so you could see a teacher view. That button says administer instead of proctor, and administer looks exactly like it does in the Classic area where you click tests available. In here, you can turn on whether or not it's online, enter answers, access your courses if one's available, and start the test. Back to the administrator view. Item banks should look very familiar. This is one area where we've just had to load kind of the old, because item banks is on the slate for some updates sometime soon. I can't give you an exact timeline on when that'll happen, but it is very on our radar, and there are some updates to item banks that we're trying to explore now. But once you get in here, this should be a very familiar space for you to access your item banks, just as you did in Classic. Item bank reports work the same way as they did before. You click it. Item banks have a very limited selection of reports, and so you can see them there. We're experiencing a little slowness at the moment. Down here, student profiles is one of my favorite tables. When you get into, and I'll show this from the teacher perspective, when you get into the student profiles, it'll load the students that you have access to. If you're a district or campus administrator, it's actually going to cap that at the first 250 students that load, but you can force it to load all of your students. If you're district personnel, that could be literally thousands and thousands of students, so be cautious. That can take some load time. We've added some interesting tools within the student profile where you can filter kids by grade level, the campus, and now I'll add it and reveal more filters, the programs that they're enrolled in. So if I need a list of just all of my bilingual students, I can check that and boom, well, this particular user doesn't have any. Let me see if I can find another one, maybe my GT students. And it will populate exactly that number of students that have the GT program. You can do the same thing with monitor groups if they're in a particular monitor group or monitor list, and even by the forms that are applied to them and which race and ethnicity you have. If you're a district administrator, this is really interesting. You can actually search by the courses that are applied to that. If you're an admin, this list gets quite a bit more populated. So if you're interested in knowing all of the pre-AP algebra students in the district, for example, you can use that filter to search just for pre-AP algebra. And essentially you have a report within this table that shows you exactly which kids have pre-AP algebra in your district. And then from here, we've got this export button where you can download that list as a CSV. Another cool feature within this table is you can also hide various columns, and those will save. And you can increase or decrease the amount of space between your rows, which is kind of handy. And then last but not least, if you have active portfolios, the portfolios and mastery sections will live in this area, and you can see those there if you have portfolios active. On the administrator side, most teachers won't see these pieces, but on the administrator side, you'll see gears next to many of these options, and these gears are where all of your configuration and setting options are. When you click one of these, the area that loads should look very familiar in that it looks just like it did in Classic for you to actually go in and manage all of those configurations settings for those assessments and such, for you to edit your teams, for you to, there's the configuration. These tabs should look very familiar. Similar with like creating and editing test types. So as you do these kinds of things, all of your settings should be in the gear drop downs, and we've tried to section them off by what kind of settings they are. So you can see these are the ones for monitor groups and list students and forms. Now that's the 60,000 foot view on what's going on. One thing I would like to point out that's come in from a little bit of feedback thus far, the quick views table might be a little confusing at first for people that have certain levels of access. What if I want to load a particular class period or grade level or something to that effect? If I'm in as a teacher, I can change this from all my students to whatever that rostered class is that I want, and it'll apply that filter just like the drop downs would have in Classic Aware. Similar to the administrator, depending on the rights that you have, you can do it by monitor list if you have any. That's an interestingly named monitor list right there. I dare any of you to say that out loud. But if you're an administrator with varying types of rights, you can see, or a teacher with varying types of rights, you can filter the quick view table depending on what rights you're actually worried about. The last thing I would like to point out is when using something like the quick views table, searching for a particular name of an assessment like STA science demo, for example. If I go to Classic, which would be an 8th grade DBA, there are a number of clicks that have to be done in order to get there, including quick views, 1. And again, I apologize. We're going a little slower than usual today. Here's a DBA, 2 clicks. This year, 3, 8th grade, 4, science, 5, STA demo, 6. 6 clicks just to get to that assessment, right? Whereas in the new nav, if I happen to know the name, and I know the search up there at the top works in Classic as well. If I happen to know the name of it, searching and clicking is just as easy as that. We've tried to build it so that if it's one that's been scored recently, it's 1 click right here if it's been scored recently, or within the quick view table, I can click just a couple of filters here, boom, and science, and there it is, the STA science demo ready to go. That's been the philosophy we've tried to have for a lot of the implementations we've done with these tables. And so trying to streamline the process, keep in mind as you're talking with your people in your district, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable from time to time, but as you get into it and actually start playing around with it, it's going to get easier. Okay. All right. That's the demo. I know there are a few questions popping out. Thank you, Tara, for handling as many of those as you could. Let's talk real quickly about tips for helping your district transition. Getting ready for the new Aware. Are you ready to start guiding your staff? We know that communication is absolutely key. You need to encourage your staff to use the new navigation now, if possible, so that when things end up going away in Classic Aware, they're ready for it. Ensure that you're signed up for the newsletters. Get that most up-to-date information and share it with your staff. Look for those in-app announcements. You see those pop-ups come up from time to time when you log in. There's a big habit for most of us to just close them and not pay attention to them. Look at those and look at the resources tied in, and you'll get some good tips, tricks, and resources that you can share with staff to help them with the transition. Communicate that the change is happening with your campus administrators during some sort of, and with your regular staff members, even during a staff meeting. Apologize, my cat. Model the new interface for your staff during start of school professional development, or even during a staff meeting after school. Prepare instructions on the most commonly accessed portions of Aware. If you're one of those people that has training materials for your district on this last big bullet, now's the time for you to start looking at maybe editing some of those things. Much of what's happening in the new nav space is not going to change between now and the start of the year. There might be a few really minor tweaks, but it won't be enough to completely derail any trainings that you put together. Now's the time to potentially start exploring getting ready for that. We also, as we do this rollout throughout April, if you run into issues with the new Aware, notice something missing or not working, maybe you're not sure if it's a feature that is missing, or maybe you just can't find it. Try to look back at the online help articles that are shared, whether it's through the pop-ups in the nav or through articles that have been sent through the newsletters, or just going straight to the Zendex website and looking. Set up district level types of feedback funnels so that one key district representative is sending feedback to Eduphoria. This will help us make sure we can respond to you as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible to minimize repeated reports of the same issues in the same district. We've got contact info on the screen right here, support@eduphoria.net, or call the support team at that phone number. Remember, this is key. It might seem new and different and odd at first, but Classic Aware is available through at least the summer, and actually going to be longer throughout the start of this next year. You can still complete any of your tasks while we fix any issues that you have identified and reported. And don't forget to actually report those issues. Once Classic retires, you can't go back. So start those balls rolling so we can get people ready now. All right, future mini-series dates. This is actually the last one, so let's just review the timeline. Last one that's planned anyhow. The new nav as default is going to be happening in April through rolled phases. You might not see it at the start of April, you might see it mid-April, you might see it end of April, but sometime during April, we intend on you getting beta as the default access, or the new nav as the default access. We're looking for that feedback. See something missing or not working, let us know. And remember, Classic will retire. We said end of the summer, but we're going to let it go at least through the start of the school year, and we'll find a nice, simple time to try to get that done. And then don't forget, we have additional resources. We've got the Aware New Navigation playlist. All of our mini webinars for the new nav are in YouTube, ready to go. That'd actually be a really good thing for you to maybe pull some clips or show portions of to your staff, because this training right here, I walked through a lot of what your teachers and district personnel might need to know and do. Aware New Navigation updates are available in the online help guide. There's a great link. And if you have something to share, I'm going to let Tara talk about that for just a second. And then I think we might be able to get to some of our Q&A. Tara, would you like to talk about becoming an Eduphoria partner?
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Before I get into that, for anyone that has posted a question in the chat, it is a synchronous flow of information. So if your question hasn't been addressed, please do post it in the Q&A, and Jeremy can review that and see what he wants to speak to first as after I share this. So if we haven't addressed your question, please put it in the Q&A so that we can see it. We can get a response directly to you without weeding through the sea of information that has come through there. So What we have in front of us is an opportunity for you to engage with us. If you are familiar with our webinar contents, you have occasionally heard us partner with other districts and showcase what they are doing locally and different information or processes that they have made available to their staff. So what we have here is a form from our partnerships team where you can express your interest to partner with us in whatever way you are most comfortable. It might just be a conversation where you're sharing some information and feedback like we've asked you throughout this presentation. We love to get your feedback to help guide our decisions and where we go next with development. This could also look like partnering with us to help host a webinar and share and showcase some amazing practices that you have going on at your district that might benefit others to hear. So we always love to have our district voices in front of other districts so that y'all can share and collaborate. Or this could look like partnering with us at a conference. So many of you that are present engage in conferences like assessment conferences across the state, and we would love to be able to support you at those events and engage with you in presentations. So if you are interested, please access that form and give us your information.
I've glanced at the questions that have stacked up. Lauren asks, is the order of the quick views analysis window, does it show test most recent to least recent? I believe the answer to that is by test ID. Typically that will end up being most recent to last recent because the order that you create them is going to follow the order that they're taken for the most part. So the answer to your question is kind of, it's more about test ID than it is about recency. You mentioned, Paula asks, you mentioned changes coming to item banks. Can I elaborate? The short answer to that is not really. We're still very heavily ideating some of those changes, but a few things we know are highly requested. I can't guarantee something's going to happen or not going to happen, but we've been looking at the things that are highly requested, but multiple local banks, an easier way of sharing items from a test to a bank. Those are things we're looking at. Again, I can't guarantee anything that will or will not appear, but these are things we're looking at. Christina asks, can someone send instructions on how to filter a quick view by teacher names or a group of teachers in Eduphoria for one assessment? You can do that once the data view is open. So if you know which test you're looking for, filter by grade, filter by year, all those fun jazz to get there. And then once the data view is opened, you can use the toggles towards the top right. Let me see if I can pull one just real fast. Yeah, this one's already open. So up here at the top right, I've got it by campus, by district, and then by teachers. So this teacher is this red shirt. You can usually click that and get it to show just which teachers you might be looking at. And if you double click on something in particular, like if I were to double click Abraham Michelle right here, it would show just Abraham Michelle. I hope that answers your question, Christina. Send a support ticket if not. Tiffany asks,
in there as well.
Oh, yes. Yes. Have any updates been made to team tests in the new nav? Team tests, we've been working on bugs. There was reported bugs where team tests were not accessible in the new Aware. I believe we've addressed most of those, but there's still one that is outstanding. Before we begin the release rollout phases in April, we're still trying to address that last bug. Team tests should be available in the new nav once we begin that rollout. Remind me of when the recording will be available, Tara. It should be just a couple of days, correct?
It will be within 24 hours. So you'll get an email tomorrow afternoon with the recording.
Christina mentions that the playlist isn't working, so we might just note that and see if we can verify.
I'll go get a link and I will post it in the chat.
Beautiful. We're past the part where I've actually reviewed them, so I'm kind of going by the fly here. Okay. Ms. Pena says the back button resets all filters when filtering author assessments. Don't use the back button. I apologize. Don't use the back button. Instead, use the breadcrumbs up at the top, and that helps retain your filters. So for example, if I filter by math and this year, and I click on an assessment, if I go back to author, the table maintains. So try to avoid that back button on the top left. Mrs. Garcia, the district would be elated if there could be an option for district level to pull constructed response report. Yes, that is highly requested. It is not planned to be a part of the new nav release, but it is something we are aware of that is highly requested. If you have the whole district, then it shows all teachers. Christina, you might need to set up a time, maybe we'll support or send in a support email so I can get more details on what it is that you're seeing. And then maybe we can work out some way to narrow in and fine tune exactly what you're trying to accomplish. We'd be very happy to help you. Will SQL scripts to access data from the backend be impacted by the full switch over to the beta version? That is an excellent question that I believe one of our engineers would be far better suited to answer than myself. I'm much more aware of just how to use our current interface and not necessarily how the backend interacts with SQL scripts. I know just enough to know kind of what you're asking, but not enough to give you a complete answer. Nadia, Nadin, if you'd like to send that question into support and make sure you tag me, just mention me in the email, I can help support, give context on what it is you might be trying to ask, and then maybe we can connect and find an answer in some way or form to that. Okay.
I'm trying to scan the chat and see if there's anything that was still remaining in there. So we have, are there changes in authoring assessments?
The actual act of authoring assessments has one very minor change in the new nav space that it should feel extremely familiar, and this hasn't been released but should be released very soon, so it's coming. It was pointed out as you toggle between tabs, not all of the tabs in Author show the test name, and so if you have to step away and come back, you might have lost track which assessment am I actually playing with. So what we're doing is we are pulling the name of the assessment out and putting it up here in the header. And so that is going to be a minor change that will be in the new nav, but not in the classic aware. But that's literally the only change. Everything else should work exactly the same.
Thank you. We have another question related to constructed responses. Is there going to be a function that allows us to view data even if the constructed responses are not yet graded?
Again, that's another one that we have seen many requests come in, but it's not something that is part of the beta release or the new nav release. And so that would be something that we would try to build into a different cycle of development.
Okay, and then I think we have one that's similar vein, but more from the admin proctoring. Are you going to allow the teacher/admin viewing capability to view constructed responses for grading? So I think this is talking about when an admin has the proctoring right turned on, being able to grade constructed responses.
So the short answer to that is no, not yet. But again, kind of like item banks, that is something we definitely have on the horizon to try to potentially figure out. Something we are attempting to do, but are not sure if we can get it squeezed in before the release is done, is alleviate some of those pain points by actually allowing administrators, when using the proctor, to manipulate student accommodations and to end a test or reopen a test. We're trying that on the short term to see if we can get that accomplished. Not sure if it'll happen yet, so no promises. But what you're talking about is definitely on the radar. It would be a part of a larger development cycle where we actually try to give a completely new set of functions to the proctor experience for administrators. And again, that's on the horizon. Can't give any timelines or promises, but it's definitely high on our list of things to try to tackle.
Thank you. We are right at time, so I'm going to take one final question that came through in the chat. Will there be a date on assessments as to when they are created? So this is information we can view.
That is not something that I have heard of as far as anything that's on our docket. I would highly recommend sending a ticket to support and asking for that to be a feature request.